wonderful good evening, or whatever time of day it is where you are. Today, we're having a go at these. It was requested that I cover how to make these insultingly easy little baskets out of none other than some rope. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a slim, long oval one to fit into these little hooks here that I've got on my wall, and then I'm also going to make one for a little square inlet in my stationery corner that is currently empty because stuff keeps falling out of it. And at the end I'll show you a little bit of other stuff that I've made out of this same cord, just because it is really so easy to do and the possibilities are endless. The concept is the same every single time. Let's get to sewing. This is just some cord that I bought at a local fabric outlet. If you live in Vienna or in Austria, you might know it as Textilmüller. And if you don't know it, now you do. But there'll be something near you in any reasonably, sized city, even in a town, if you have a sewing shop, or you can get this kind of stuff off Amazon. And basically the one that I bought comes in a 100-meter roll. There's a load on there. That comes in white, or like this sort of cream colour, and in black, which I got in the cupboard. And then I also bought these two tiny little mini rolls of 10 meters each, blue and pink. They had some other colours that I knew I would definitely never use, and this kind of stuff lends itself well to like baby presents. If anyone in your family or circle of friends is having a baby, then you can make them something that is really sweet, very useful, because there ain't nothing worse than giving new time parents a useless present, and it looks quite sweet. Yellow could probably also work well in that situation. But anyway, I've measured out that distance up there to be 6 centimeters wide and 30 centimeters long. Obviously we can't start out with that measurement because we're going to be going round and round a couple of times. So I'm going to start out with a 24 centimeter piece. So I'm going to measure that out. 24 centimeters. There we go. Roughly about there is where I'm going to fold it. And then that is going to be my first loop. So I'm going to start on this end here, and I'm going to start with the zigzag, and then I'm going to do back and forth a little bit, and then I'm going to go all the way down here, and then once we get to there I'm going to loop it round and then just keep going on that side, and then you keep doing that basically, and that is literally all there is to it. I could stop the video here and you would know what to do. Don't leave, that's bad for my analytics. But yeah, so that's essentially what we're doing. Let's get going. So I've got the sewing machine on the zigzag stitch, and I've got the settings how I want them. And now I'm gonna start with this little loop, and I'm gonna stick that under there with the loose beginning part here on my left, because that means that once I get to the end of it, I'm gonna be turning it this way, and I like turning the project away from me. I think you can see here that my presser foot has 2 little red markings, and I'm just going to make sure that one red marking lines up with one side and the other red marking aligns with the other side. Right, okay, so let's get started. I'm just pushing this together here with my fingers before putting the foot down so that it's nice and snug, and then I'm just going to start out my zigzag stitch. You'll find, possibly, because this is quite thick rope, it gets stuck, so it's not actually moving by itself, which it should be. What I do is after a few stitches, I could just take the remaining thread sticking out the back here and pull slightly, and then it'll start moving through. But we don't want to forget in the beginning that we have to sometimes adjust the two ropes to make sure that they're nice and snug together. And I've got to, in this case, use this button here for my sewing machine. For your sewing machine, it'll probably be somewhere else, to do a back stitch in front to secure the thread. Alright, so now make sure it gets through. Alright, and that essentially is it. I'm just going to keep doing this now. Once I get to where the thread starts, I'm also going to back stitch a little bit. Just to make double sure. And whenever I do the turning, specifically in the beginning when you've got to go round a really sharp curve like this, I like to lift up the presser foot just so that I can move it around easily. But if you do this, make sure that your needle is down, because if your needle is up, then you'll find that you can move it around too much and then you'll lose your place. So now I'm going to rotate this ever so slightly. And when you get to one of these tight curves in the beginning, it'll be a little bit difficult. You might want to seek the help of some sort of flat item to sort of really push the bits underneath. You could also use some craft scissors to get in there and just make sure that everything that is supposed to be under the needle is under the needle. So I'm gonna just very carefully, I hope you can see, very carefully just keep making sure that it zigzags back and forth. Alright, making sure to really pinch that side shut. My hand is nicely in the way. Right. And then once I'm round the corner, I'm also gonna back stitch again. And I feel like people get nervous when the fabric or whatever it is that they're sewing gets stuck, or if the presser foot like moves up and down sort of drastically. At any point you can just lift it up and have a look at what's going on. It's not going to be a drama. You just have a look, understand the situation. In the worst case, you just take it all out, undo the thread and start again. It's, you know, it's as simple as that. Nothing's ruined. And like now, I think I sewed a little bit too far to the right, so I'm just gonna back stitch again. A nice way to make sure that you're always getting in both sides of this cord is to once again make sure that the little red dots are on one side and on the other side, and I'm making sure that this split or this join is exactly at the center of the presser foot. Alright, lift up my foot, turn it round a little bit, just a little. And at this point you want to sew nice and slowly, just to make sure your needle goes where it should go. And again, and again. And it's only this fiddly at the very beginning when you have these sharp turns. With every turn, it gets wider and wider, so it'll get easier and easier with every single turn. The larger the thing gets, the easier it is. Back stitching again, just to make sure. And we're off. And I'm just going to keep going until I have the right width, which will be 6 centimeters roughly, because that's going to be the right size to fit on my little IKEA shelf thingy. As you now might be able to see, I have reached 6 centimeters in width. So this is now my base, and from that point onwards I want it to start curving upwards. All you need to do in order to get that lift around the side is take the bottom and pick it up as you're sewing round. Just pick it up as far as you can go. You won't notice after the first round, but you will start to notice that it will curve up, and then after 3 rounds you'll start really seeing that lip. So let me show you that. All I'm doing really is holding this up here and using my hand to just steady it against the presser foot. I'm just holding it steady as it goes round. Finally figured out the settings to get proper exposure on this thing. Around the corner, making sure to still be lifting this side up, going a bit slower. If you make a mistake, just go back over it. Like Bob Ross said, happy little accidents, it's all good. Right, so I've only done a couple of rounds, but you can already see that lip starting to form. So we've got our nice little 6 centimeter wide base that gently curves upwards into this, and now the more I add to that, the higher that's going to get, and I reckon I'm going to go probably up about 6 centimeters as well. Now this is a cool thing to have happened. I've actually run out of cord. It's the first time I've run out of cord. I've made all of those previous projects with just 100 meters, so I've now reached the end of that, which is brilliant because now I'm going to take that opportunity to add a different color just to finish off the top. As you can see, we've already got quite a lot of basket here. So now I'm gonna take, what do you reckon? Are we going pink or are we going blue? I'm going pink. Got my pink cord. I am just going to sew round with the same white thread. You could obviously change it to a pink thread. I'm not going to be that precious about it. I'm just going to use this. And what I want to do now is attach it straight to this one by doing the following. As you can see, this cord actually has some inner cords, and what we want to do is pull these out a little bit. You can use some tweezers, that would make it easier. I'm going to pull those out a little bit, make sure I get them all, and then I'm just going to chop off the front portion just a little bit, push it back out. So we've now got this front section of the new cord that's empty, so to speak. Now I'm going to use that to sort of wrap around the previous one, just so I get a little bit of a join, something to slightly hold on to. And this is going to be fiddly, just so you know. And what that also does is it helps it stop being too bulky, because if we just added 2 cords on top of each other, then there'd be bulk. But this way, we've got one empty cord covering the old full cord. I'm going to go slowly, and I'm going to use this to help me out. Right. So we've started off our new colour there. Also, you might be tempted to watch the needle go back and forth, but that's actually going to throw you off course. The best thing to look at is this line here and that. That'll keep you on course. I'm just going to keep going around now. I've now reached pretty much the end of where I want this to go. I want 3 layers of the pink, so I'm going to end here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to repeat what we did before, really. I'm going to cut it off about here. Pull these out a little bit, cut it off, and then make sure that we have a nice flat piece which is going to wrap into here to finish it off, so we don't have like a raw edge sticking off the edge. Pull it out, snip them off, and now we have a nice flat end piece that we can sew into here. Now I'm just going to sew over that end bit a couple of times to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And there we have it. So all that's left to do now is to cut off these threads that are sticking out, because obviously you run out of thread while doing something like this, because you do use a lot of thread going round and round and round. So you'll have to replace your bobbin thread a bunch of times, which is fine. And then at the end you can just chop them off, provided you've always done your back stitch. So none of these threads are going to end up going anywhere. Righto, so finished that one. As you can see, we've got a nice little 3-layer different color up top. This is the part where we added and finished the rows. So obviously they're going to be, because we're spiraling round, they're going to be offset by 1. To make this a little bit cleaner, you can do what I did on these ones and add a little sort of decorative cover, just using some leftover sash from a present, you know, from wrapping presents, or sun ink. You could use some fabric, or you could just leave it as is if it doesn't bother you. If I was giving this away as a present, I would probably cover it, make it look a little bit nicer. I know that some places do leather, so they just cut out a little strip of leather, put it over, and then you can secure it with 1 stitch going across, or you can do what I did here and add like a little button. That'll work too. And specifically with these sort of oblong ones, you might find that once you've done, they look a little bit sort of flat. Because they're so long, you can open them up. With these ones, it's not as easy because they're short and round. These ones you can open up, you just have to shape it a bit. You can also make sure that while you're turning it on the sewing machine, you're really keeping it nice and tight, because the tighter every layer is, holding it in, yeah, the shorter every layer is, the more it will stay contained. But if you sort of leave it a little bit looser, like I did here to make these sort of slanted edges, then you'll get this wedge effect. And now all that's left to do is put it in place. Plop you on there. Very nice indeed. So that's how you make one of those circular ones, either circular or oval. The longer the first piece of string is, the more oval it's going to be. The shorter the first piece of string is, or if you really just flip it round immediately, then you'll get something rounder like this. And then there's also square ones. So if you want it to be square, then you can't really fold it round, because it'll always turn into this oval thing. What you want to do there is you're going to start off the same way, but then instead of curling round that way, going into a circle, you're going to fold back on yourself, essentially like this, in a sort of a zigzag pattern, until you have the box that you want to work with. And then from there, once you have that little box, let's use my phone as an example. So I've just made a little box going up and down and up and down and up and down. And then what I would do is I would turn it round and start going around the outside. And that square or rectangular base will then hold its shape. So let's do that next. I am going to be lazy and keep the white bobbin and top thread. I can't be bothered to find some pink thread. I'm going for about 6 centimeters width. Starting the same way as I did last time, pinching it in there, and off we go. Right, so as you can see, I've gone back and forth here. This was a little bit fiddly to do, and also you can see I wasn't very precise here, because it's kind of difficult to get the corner exactly right. I would need a lot more practice. There's a trial and error, people, it's a trial and error. So I've got 10 centimeters that way and about 6 centimeters that way, which is nice. And now what I'm going to do at the end is I'm just going to come around and I'm going to give it a border and start folding it up like that to make myself a little box. Now I'm going to be really precise here and make sure that this edge comes up nice and snug wherever I can. And I will be using my scissors to push inwards here just to make sure I get the most snug fit. Word of warning though, if you are using a hard object to push in, don't push it right into the line of where the needle is going to go, otherwise you might break your needle. It could scare you, nothing's going to happen, but you might break your needle. It's easy enough to replace, but it's just a bit annoying. now I've sewn nicely around the edge, so I've got a relatively straight border, and now I'm going to start lifting it upwards here and making that curve. And now we can see we're starting to get that little curve around the top. Right, so that's about as high as I want to go, so I've cut it off, and now I'm going to do the same thing as before. Just going to pull that front bit out like so, snip it off, and that's going to go down there. And there we have it, after a little bit of shaping with a few pinches and squeezes. You got yourself a rectangular top. Specifically with the square base one, you're always going to have these little areas where the cord curves round. You can see the spaces in the back. You're going to be left with those by default whenever you curve anything. I would put some lining inside, so I take some fabric and sew a little bit of lining on the inside so you don't see all that. Give it a bit more structure. You pinch the edges and just do a few stitches around there. In fact, let's do that. You could take some normal thread, but I, being the person that I am, save these cords and sashes and stuff from Christmas presents. I got loads of them, and from Christmas cards, and we're going to use this instead. So I'm going to take a needle with a relatively large eye, feed that through, and then I'm just going to pinch this corner and add that little bow. Pull that through. There we go. This would be extremely cute little baby girl present, if you wanted to give them pink, obviously. So I fed it through there, and I'm going to take it round just one more time over the top and back around the other side so that we can really pinch that shut. And then all that's left to do is tie a little bow. Tee-hee! Right, I'm going to repeat that 4 more times. Look how cute that is. I mean, it is not my usual thing, but it is quite adorable. Quite adorable indeed. So that is giving it structure. That's not going anywhere, right? That is going to stay rectangular now forever. Imagine that in pink and blue. Oh, sweet. I'm only making one. I can't be bothered to do that again. But slotting nicely into my little stationary corner where I can now house my highlighters. This is obviously overflowing, but cute. You have been made redundant. So we've done our little boat situation and a small highlighter holder. The ones I showed you before, this one, I've got a smaller one. I've got another one with little handles on the edge. All I did there was I sewed round, stopped sewing, started sewing over here again and made sure I left a bit of extra, and then the next time round I just followed that. You could do that a few times to make a bit of a chunkier handle. Definitely make sure to back stitch over this section and reinforce it so that it doesn't tear. You could do that as decoration. I've seen it done in much smaller sort of bulges. If you do them smaller, then you can use it as decoration. And then if you want to go like full out, this one took me quite a while. You can make yourself a whole bag. It's the exact same process. There is no difference between this. In fact, this is how it started out, just a bit wider on the bottom. No difference between that and that, other than doing the same thing a bit longer. And all I did down here was I used black thread instead of white, just to create this sort of contrasting look. And then I slapped on some handles that I wrapped around the bottom to give it reinforcement. And there you go. So honestly, this stuff, the possibilities, I tell you, they're endless. Truly endless. Thanks for coming. Tell me what else you want to see. I'll do it.